It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Why on earth are you making chocolate pudding?
Because I've lost control of my life.
Hi guys, I'm Greg with DadPadGaming with my review of Outriders. Outriders is a game that is published by Square Enix and developed by People Can Fly, the team that brought you the likes of Gears of War, Fortnite, Bulletstorm, and more games where you get to shoot the ever-loving shit out of things until they kind of look like ground beef. I'm not one to build much anticipation, so let's get straight to it. Is Outriders good? Yes. Is it great? You be the judge. Okay, so before we get started, one thing I want to make clear. This is a review that is solely based on my experience. If you don't like my opinion, that's okay. But if you agree with me, or you see my point of view as interesting, then stick around. My ultimate goal is to build your trust, and then start promoting shitty games that I get paid to review. But until then, I pay for these games out of pocket, there are zero sponsors, and this is all done for the love of gaming. In short, I have no reason to lie to you. Let's get started. I've got to be honest, my first impressions of this game were not good. I wasn't on the hype train, I didn't watch a single trailer. In fact, in my world, this game just kind of popped up. I jumped into the free demo and gave it a spin. I wasn't impressed. The shooting mechanics were fine, but just not good enough to keep me around. And I also questioned the gameplay philosophy of why they chose such a frenetic movement system for just another run-of-the-mill cover-based shooter. Boy, was I wrong. More specifically, I was playing wrong. Seeing that this is a third-person cover-based shooter, I approached this game in the same fashion that you would approach maybe an Uncharted or Division. Well, it turns out that frenetic movement is implemented because playing this game the way it's intended to be played, it can be just as fast-paced as your modern Doom titles. The intention here is that aggression is encouraged and incentivized. The concept of hiding behind a waist-high structure and waiting for your moment won't get you far here. You're gonna have to get your hands dirty. This is mainly because you don't regenerate health, at least not fully. Once you get below about 30%, you can go into cover to recover up into that said 30% mark. The rest of your health is regenerated from weapon perks, teammates, and your class abilities. In short, you've got to kill to heal. Character creation isn't the greatest, but it does get the job done. All skin tones you expect to be present are present, but I do want to give a special shout out to a hood classic, the black girl bun with the afro puff. Their hair texture is pretty spot on, and there's just enough representation here to satisfy me on a personal level. But all in all, so long as you're not expecting anything on par with titles like Cyberpunk or maybe Black Desert, you should be just fine here. As much as I've enjoyed the game, it's not perfect. There are a few things that hold this title back from being great in my opinion. For one, server issues are definitely a thing. I spent entirely too much time staring at this screen. I guess that's to be expected with most of these major online releases here today in 2021. Not saying that that's something I'm okay with, but we've all been a bit desensitized to it. The narrative here also seems to be pretty meh. You're more or less your traditional badass military grunt. Our hero finds themselves between a rock and a hard place and ends up being put in a cryogenic state. They wake up about 30 years later, the planet that mankind has settled on has gone up in smokes, and your custom grunt is ready to save the world. Because, well, plot. I will say it's not all bad though. Even though the main campaign is just okay in terms of narrative, the side quests thus far have been pretty solid, but not groundbreaking. They usually do a really good job of building the world and establishing lore within the world. I also found that the game seems to take itself a lot less serious during these side quests. Some may find some of these shenanigans to be a bit odd, but I did catch a few times that it was pretty funny.
Before I can use the cable car, I gotta go deal with that volcano.
What, are you kidding? You got some kind of a death wish?
The biggest letdown here is the fact that the writing and voice acting can be a tad bit wooden at times. There's just a general lack of polish. Usually during cutscenes where you interact with NPCs, you'll even notice that your character's clothes just kind of flop around whenever the camera cuts back to your hero. It's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely one of those things that once you've noticed, You just can't unsee it. Another huge thing worth mentioning here is the way that difficulty is handled. In Outriders, difficulty is determined by a system referred to as World Tier. How does it work? There's over 10 settings here, starting at Explorer, which is more or less baby-ass baby mode, and it goes up from there. Each level has its own EXP bar, which allows you to unlock the next level of difficulty. Each world tier cranks up your chances of getting more rare loot, but also ups the ante in terms of the threat level of your enemies. As you get higher in world tier, you'll start to see that enemies and loot both will start to appear above your current level, and this does get pretty challenging, especially when you level up to a new tier. It's common that when you start a new world tier, you will die. A lot. a lot. Like, no, seriously. I cannot stress this enough. You will get brutalized. I made the prideful mistake of setting my game to an auto-escalate feature, and it really exposes some of the major flaws of this really awesome system. While the game does get more challenging, it shows in the form of you just pretty much getting your teeth kicked in, and again, you'll die a lot. But because the loot does also appear at a higher level than your current level, you'll eventually luck out and kill enough baddies to get better armor and guns. And once this happens, the experience does balance out and becomes a lot more manageable. Be in mind it can be rage-inducing along the way, and this game does like to remind you that you suck by telling you that you can reduce your difficulty level from the option settings. I'd love to see other games implement something similar to this difficulty setting. However, it's not perfect and still needs to be refined. Last thing that needs to be touched on is character builds and loot. In terms of character builds, things can get pretty bonkers. Skill trees are pretty vast and have plenty of wiggle room for each player to find something that tailors to their unique play styles. Personally, I went with a Pyromancer and have a focus on abilities that intensify the effects of fire damage and extend the length of which enemies burn. One of my first legendary weapons I came across had a mod that added a 30% chance of making enemies bleed out. The combination of flame damage and bleeding out made me pretty overpowered for a very short amount of time. But that's how these things work in looter shooters. Everything eventually becomes obsolete. All in all, there's a lot of loot to be found here, and all rare weapons and armors have the ability to carry mods on them that can help up the potency or reduce the cooldown period for your class abilities. Considering that I've been playing with one of 4 classes, it's easy to imagine that the possibilities here are nearly limitless in terms of possibility and potential. Outriders is a good game. It's just too early to tell if this will be another Destiny 2 or another Anthem. One thing I know for sure is that I am thoroughly enjoying my time with Outriders. Despite its quirks, it just sort of works. Believe me, I will sink more hours into this game well beyond the main campaign, so long as the content keeps coming, that is. Before we wrap up, I do want to give a special shout out to my amazing wife. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. I never would have had the push needed to just jump into something that I love. Thanks for watching, and don't hesitate to like and subscribe.
Get the fuck out of here!